I'll be honest with you. I am not a bold protester. I don't thrive in heated debates or political arguments, and I avoid confrontation in favor of listening and collaboration. So when I was given the topic of resistance, I was skeptical. But as I sat with this idea, I realized that resistance is something we are all called to in a deep and spiritual way. It may not always look like standing on a picket line or shouting through a megaphone, though sometimes it can. Resistance can look like feeding the hungry, sheltering the homeless, welcoming the stranger, and expecting nothing in return. It can look like building unlikely friendships with people we are told to fear. Resistance, I think, comes in many forms, and when done in love, is a holy and biblical act. So what is resistance? And what does it look like in the Bible? Resistance is refusing to conform to the patterns of this world, especially when those patterns are built on power, self-preservation, and making ourselves bigger or more secure at the expense of others. Resistance is refusing to participate in systems and societal expectations that are at odds with the dream God has for all of us. A few weeks ago, we read about deliverance stories. For every story of deliverance in the Bible, there is also a story of resistance. Resistance is Moses standing before Pharaoh saying, "Let my people go." It's Esther walking into the king's court, exposing who she is and calling out hatred. It's Daniel refusing to bow before a foreign god. And it's Mary saying yes and singing of an upside-down kingdom where the proud are scattered and the humble are lifted up. It's the woman at the well, all alone, offering a stranger a drink of water and conversation. And what is resistance to me? It's remembering that we have been delivered and refusing to go back. We have been delivered from the impossible, from our own selfishness and cruelty, and the world's standards of who belongs and who does not. We have been delivered from fear and division and having to earn our own belovedness. Deliverance, as you may recall, is not just a one-time event. Just as God walked with the Hebrews in the desert as a pillar of fire, God continues to walk with us. And just like them, we mess up. We are tempted to go back to the bondage and the old ways we knew before. But resistance is remembering that we have been delivered. And it's knowing what we have been delivered for love. Today, the world tells us to sort ourselves into categories, rich or poor, in or out, Republican or Democrat, weak or strong. The pressure to pick a side is overwhelming and undeniable. But Jesus tells us that we don't have to play that game. Jesus didn't. Jesus showed up for those on the margins. The ones the world said were out, Jesus declared them in, beloved and valued. I can only imagine that in a first century Roman-occupied Jewish community, these same pressures to sort and divide existed. But Jesus shattered that framework. Jesus brought people together. Jesus healed the unlikely and the undeserving. Jesus humbled himself to wash dirty, stinky, sinful feet. And how did Jesus resist? He chose grace. He chose people. He chose love. So this is my resistance, to choose love. When the temptation comes to own someone in a debate, to snap with that biting clapback, I resist. I refuse to let the struggle for power steal our ability to care for one another. When the temptation comes to guard my resources, to avoid eye contact with someone asking for assistance, to stay in the safety of my own privilege, and to let the dehumanizing joke slide, I resist. When I find myself tempted to let the plight of the immigrant or the poor go unassisted, I challenge myself to show up for them in a tangible and personal way. Serve a meal at a soup kitchen. Volunteer to help with English as a second language class. We resist by lifting up our fellow sojourner in thought, word, and deed. In truth, we need each other. Jesus is bigger than any election, any policy, or any earthly power, because Jesus isn't playing the same game. Jesus changes the game. Jesus changes everything. And Jesus calls us to the most revolutionary act of resistance imaginable. Love our neighbors as ourselves. And who is my neighbor? Everyone. Love everyone. Love is our resistance.